Hey everybody, it's Greg Kettner. Welcome back to the WorkHappy podcast. Thank you for tuning in, whether you're on the treadmill, in your car, or falling asleep. And the goal of the podcast is to bring on guests who are just like you and I, who have learned how to work happy, have learned how to work on themselves, have learned how to reach out. We appreciate you listening. And the goal here with the WorkHappy podcast is to talk about life, talk about mental health, talk about work, and share ideas on how we can work better, how we can take care of ourselves, how we can be more productive, how we can use laughter in the workplace. Because at the end of the day, if you're anything like me, I want a job where I obviously make money, but a job where I feel like I can go to, have fun, and help other people. And I'm really excited that I get to do this. And the podcast is one of the avenues that I do that. And my favorite thing about the podcast, other than hearing back from people who really found value in the guests that we have, is talking to these people, regular people, just like you and me, who've gone through life, who have figured it out, how to work happy, how to have a positive mindset, and how to talk about mental health with a family or friends or coworkers, a counselor. However we can talk about mental health is a good thing. I know a lot of us still feel the shame and the guilt, which is there. There's nothing we can do about that. Other than talk about it, the more we help each other, the more we understand that we're all going through this thing called life together, the more we can help each other and be better people and be better humans. Today, I'm really excited. I've known Brady for 25 plus years. We met while I was working for the Vancouver Canucks. Probably the best formal job I've ever had other than speaking. Made a lot of friends, learned a lot from my colleagues, still have some very good friends from back in the day. We met and we both had our journeys. We hung out a lot. We went to the bars after games, all those kinds of things. We had different careers, but we always remained close. Brady's been one of those guys who I can always reach out to, whether it's 6 a.m. in the morning or late at night, and say, hey man, I got something on my mind. You got a chance to talk. He's been great for me that way, a great friend, a great mentor. He's a hell of a dad, a hell of a soccer player, hell of a sheriff, hell of a partner. Just everything that he does with grace and compassion and full on. And he doesn't take no for an answer. He's got 2 wonderful kids. He can make me laugh, and everything he does with gusto. And he will cheer somebody on forever and ever, like he has for me. And so much so that he's still a fan of the Oakland Athletics. So this guy never gives up. So welcome to the podcast, Brady. Thanks for being on, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. It's finally good to do this. I know we've talked about it for a little bit, but it's finally good to connect like this.
Yeah, no, and it was good. The last great conversation we had was down in Arizona when we went to the Innings Festival with Colby.
For sure.
And I remember, and I want to thank you because we were having a talk around the campfire about family and life and jobs and stuff. And relationships came up, and you and Colby were like, oh yeah, we go to a counselor. And I am now too, on how to communicate better, right? I do communication and speaking, but in a relationship, it's different. And so I want to thank you for encouraging me to do that and having those conversations between 2 dudes, right? I felt safe, and you encouraged me, and you would ping me and like, hey, have you booked it yet? I'm like, no, I'm getting there. But tomorrow is number 2. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
That's awesome, man. And I think that just goes to show, if you create that safe zone, right? And the 3 of us, obviously just friendship aside, but we've always been able to be honest with one another and tell the other person where they might be lacking or needing to put a little bit more effort in. And I just think that trip was an awesome trip for us to really be honest and open with each other.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it grew that bond even deeper. My resolve coming back from that, saying, you know what, I can share with people now on stage that I go and see a counselor, right? And if they go, this guy can do it, I can too. So it was good for my soul and my heart and my brain, my headspace. So
yeah, it's like anything else. If you're going to learn to do something, you're going to take lessons to do it, right?
Yeah.
So learn to communicate and learn to have different outlooks and stuff, why not put the effort in?
Yeah. And I kind of liken counseling to hockey, right? You can be the best player in the world. You can be Gretzky, and you're out there on the ice. You're talented. You have all the tools you need. But it's the coach who's standing on the bench looking at the whole ice. He sees the defense. He sees the offense. And when you come back, he can go, "Hey, have you thought about this or try this?" And that's counseling, right? We all have the tools within us and the means. It's just having someone to guide us and say, "Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?" And the payoff is huge.
For sure. And as both being men, you throw in some ego and the inability to humble ourselves sometimes. And once you're able to do that, it just opens up a lot of doors.
I know you're a sheriff, so there's a lot that comes with that, a lot of stress and PSTD. You've gone through that. Now, if I scroll through your social media, it's how do we reach out? How do we help other guys? How do we talk? And in your line, it's very male dominated, right? It's very macho. It's don't crack, don't cry, be tough, suck it in. And you've learned that's not necessarily true. And I think you're better for it.
Yeah, you've hit it right on the head there. 21 years as a first responder, you go through and see a lot of things, but it is that mentality of someone asks how you're doing and I'm fine, or the fear of I've got some rank behind me now within my workplace, and the fear of being ostracized for coming forward and showing maybe some weakness, which we learn now that is actually a strength.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know you've checked out my social media. My gift now is just like to give back, look out for other guys, help support guys and girls in my profession, because that's what I know, lived experience. I can go in a bit about my story if you'd like me to go into that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when we met, we were both single, living the dream, and we both thought we were happy. We had it made. We had good jobs. We had good friends. And there were a lot of nights we were out at the bar hanging out.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? And then 25 years later, we both have families. We're old. We're gray. We got glasses now, but
yeah,
we're happier. I know I'm happier than I was back then.
You personally know my journey, and the listeners might not, but definitely took a few years of some really hard times for myself to get where I'm at today. But I would do it again in a heartbeat. And 19 of those 20 years, I probably suppressed a lot of things that I probably should have been talking to someone with. Probably had a good impact on my marriage that dissolved a little bit, and that was the inability to communicate and the inability to share some of that stuff, and being upset by that, but not understanding that I probably should have been speaking to someone professionally about it as well. 2021, my world came to a crashing halt with everything, and I finally took that knee and asked for some help because I couldn't do it on my own at all. And the sad truth about it is, in our line of work, there isn't basically a suicide epidemic going on right now, and that came to full frontal for me. But that was an option that I presented myself, and I'm super thankful that I didn't follow through with that. And I had some people in my corner that sent me in the right direction, and I ended up going to back east to Ontario for a 63-day program that deals with first responders. And I always knew something was going on, but I didn't understand what it was. And then it's funny because once you actually get a label, you can actually understand why that was happening. And I was clinically diagnosed with complex PTSD and work-related trauma addiction. My coping mechanism was hit the bottle, right? Shut it off, shut the brain off, go away from that all. But in doing that, I was still thinking in my head, I was portraying that image. I'm a coach for my kids' sports. I'm a leader in the community. Go home, I was falling apart.
Yeah. Awesome. And that's great. Thank you for sharing, because again, right, when we first met, there's no way in hell we would talk about
No.
health or suicide or alcohol. It was like, all right, what are we doing next week? And I applaud you for taking that. You went into a facility for 63 days. How long into that time frame did you go? Was it right away, or did it take you?
For me, it was, I had about a month waiting period, and I was off work at the time when I was waiting. Okay. So obviously your world comes to a fork in the road and you do a lot of thinking, right?
Yeah.
So that was probably the hardest month there. And literally from day one, once I got in there, my mindset was just take full advantage of this opportunity. I was on the other side of Canada, basically away from my kids. I had an opportunity for the first time in a very long time just to work on myself.
Yeah.
And I just literally, like I said, I jumped right in. And within a day or two after getting acclimatized to where I was, like things were coming to light.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. I'm sure you made a lot of friends while you were there. Have you kept in touch with any of them?
I have. And again, I'll touch back into that, like the epidemic that we're in. When I had, I think, 20 to 23 people in my cohort, and there's been a few that have taken their lives since I finished that program. And that's unfortunately the reality of this disease and this line of work that they both kind of encompass. And even some, they had reached out for help, and yet they still thought that was the option they needed to go. Definitely sets in the reality of it for me.
Yeah. No. And it's great that when we do talk about it, or even just, I've known, we've got a group here in Walla called Men in the Middle. And once a month we go and cook and serve dinner to the homeless people at the Christian Aid Center. We'll have a golf night. We did a wine night where we raised $1,000 for medical for the vineyard workers, all these kinds of things. But it's not necessarily events, it's the conversation that we can have with one another so that we can build trust. And when shit does go sideways, whether it's our marriage or a relationship or finances, I've got 20 guys that I can call up besides you and Colby now that are right here in town, or go for a coffee and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or my kid's doing this. What about, they're older, right? They've already gone through it. What did you guys do? Or help?
Yeah,
help
it's it's funny, but if you really start to think about it, you can understand it. Like when you have those conversations with, I'll just say, our guy friends, and we open up and we're honest and we humble ourselves, our relationships become so much stronger. And you look at the same dynamic of individuals in your life that you're not like that with, and your friendship is different.
Yeah.
It's surface level, it's transactional, it's what can they do for me so I can do for them. But those people who you really open up to, you instantly, it's like family.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that takes me back to that weekend we were down in Arizona. It was 4 days with just the three of us. And there was so much more meaning and bonding and connecting than there probably was in the 10 years that we're all starting out in Vancouver, just because it was intense and we trusted each other. We didn't have to have a bottle to have a conversation.
No, and as you said, the key word is trust, right? Like we can talk about anything and everything with no fear or retribution, and that's what makes the difference. And as men who are openly talking now, that's what we're trying to do in our community, is show that it's okay to have things going on.
Yeah.
What's not okay is to keep it in and take that burden on yourself. That's why we have these communities.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Being a leader in your work area, in the signs for the guys who might be struggling with a bottle or PSTD, what advice can you give to others when you do reach out now? Obviously, there's trust. I'm not going to walk up to a stranger and go, hey, how's your mental health? What have you found that works in sharing your story with other people?
Yeah, I just think it's that lived experience. There's a huge bond and trust created right off that lived experience. If I can show the path and show the troubles and the triumphs and all that stuff that I've gone through, and I'm still here and I'm working and I'm living the best life that I can, one day at a time type thing.
Yeah.
But know the benefit of just having that community behind you is huge. You're not alone. You're not going to be ostracized for stepping up. You're going to be taken care of. That's my new mission now. When we learn, there's definitely things in my career that I wish I could go back and look and maybe have appreciation for what that other person on the other side of my desk was going through. I'm definitely changing the way I do my daily work and just really taking away all that other stuff and just treating humans as humans.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And even though I'm speaking from a stage after every talk I give, there's people who come up to me because there's some level of trust that's built during that 45 minutes. And people have shared stories with me about kids that they've lost or partner that they've lost to suicide, and they're all like, wish I could have, should have. And I'm not a counselor per se, but I am a bridge, right? So I can say, here's the experience that our family went through with my stepdaughter losing her dad to suicide. And we all went to counseling. We still go to counseling from time to time when we need to. And being that bridge and sharing with people. One guy came up to me a couple months ago afterwards, and he said, you know what? I brought you in to talk to my team about mental health. And he goes, but it had a way bigger effect than I thought it would have on me, because I lost a brother when I was younger to suicide and I never dealt with it. And I need to go and have a conversation with somebody. It just, from me talking about it on stage and from what you do, and I think you're even closer, right? Like you said, you lived the experience, you made it through, and here you are seeing signs in other people, and people feel like they can talk to you because they know.
Yeah, and I'm the first one to, don't get me wrong, I'm not selling everything's rosy and gold and every day is the best day.
Right.
I have dark days, I have bad days, but I've learned some skills and coping mechanisms of how to deal with that properly now.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is talking.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great question. When you do have those dark days, for me, it's golf and talking. Like the stuff that you've learned, is it just sitting down? Is it talking to your partner? Is it talking to a friend or calling a counselor? What works for you?
And what it might, on your ticky box, that might check all of them on a certain day. That's what it take to get through that day. For me, it's definitely the age-old thing of get out, get your body moving, don't sit in it. This too shall pass type stuff. But when you're in it, it is hard to wrap your head around that. My partner is in the first responder work as well. So we're able to have these conversations that we both experience. And I encourage people to have a team behind you. It's not just your friends that you can talk to. I've got professional people in my corner that I don't just call when it hits the fan. We do those regular check-ins so that I can, you've got your highs and your lows. You want to stay in between those. You do your best to stay in between those.
Yeah, no, and the same for me. When I'm struggling or I feel the overwhelm, it's talking, or if I need to go talk to my counselor, but talking to Becky, talking to Rachel, talking to you, Colby, my friends, right? My close circle, because I'm not gonna just reach out to anybody and going, you know what, I'm really struggling in this area and I need help. I might listen, but it's that level of trust.
And the chances of that, when you just reach out randomly, like there's a good chance that might backfire as well, right?
Yeah.
The people might not understand. So you're exactly right. It's that trust, it's the bond, but initially you're going to have to tell someone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, before you went into the facility for treatment, I just recently read a study by Lyra Health. They said 8 out of 10 people are still not willing to talk about mental health in the workplace because of shame, guilt, stigma. Was that for you? And then when you did get the help, was that notion blown away? Have you had anybody going, oh, what's wrong with you? Went to a treatment center?
Absolutely. And that's what I battle with now. And my new mission with my department is I'm trying to create a wellness section actually within our whole department.
Yeah.
That would encompass the services and help individuals through those times. Simple things as when you go off work like that, you've got a stack of paperwork 2 feet tall that you can barely write your name on at the time. And you're expected to navigate that through yourself. The stigma in our line of work is there. It's not disappearing that slowly. I can't change the whole thing, but I can change my work environment, right? So I just really encourage people to feel safe, to feel welcomed, and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And how many people are in your department? This culture that you're trying to create?
For my office alone, I've got 53 employees underneath me.
Okay.
Province-wide, we're about 550.
Okay.
So we're a fairly small department for what we do, but there's definitely a need there. I've had so many individuals reach out to me since I've been back to work. They saw what I've gone through. They've seen what the steps I've had to take. And to be honest, a lot of these people I wouldn't have talked to before.
Yeah.
But if I can be that bridge or that stepping stone to recovery and to help, by all means, my hand's going to be there every single time.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you talked to your kids about the journey?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
As they get a little bit older, I share a little bit more, and
Yeah.
I explain to them. They definitely understand that the line of work, the dangers that dad potentially is in daily. I don't say I'm just going over here for an hour. I tell them I'm going to speak to my doctor, and he helps me work through things. And
Yeah.
when I sold to them that I went to treatment, they wouldn't have understood that part, I don't think. So I just told them exactly what I was doing. Dad's going away to learn skills, how to live happier.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
And that's with parenting, right? You don't want to dump a kid on, or dump whatever on your kid, right? When they're 6 and why mommy and daddy broke up, or why daddy's or mom's not going to work anymore. But little by little, and I would imagine that it's even built a stronger relationship with you and your kids too, right?
Oh, we have such great conversations. My kids are 11 and 9, and they're emerging. Their imaginations are huge and stuff like that. But we have such good conversations, and they understand, for the most part, what that whole journey is and why I do what I do now. And random phone calls I get to talk to people to help, they don't ask who's that. They just go, Dad's helping someone.
Yeah, which is so cool, right? Because that's what you want for your kids, is for them to grow up in a society where it's not about me. It seems like with social media and everything else, it's me. But when we see this in our kids and they know that you're helping other people, it's so cool.
Yeah, obviously, if I can pass that on, that's my goal and my mission, right?
Yeah.
Lead by example and show that it's okay to speak and have emotions, feel those emotions because they're real.
Yeah.
And just talk about them.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we hold them down, whether it's with whatever we're dealing with, work or relationships, and I found this, and I'm learning, I'm a people pleaser and I don't like confrontation. So I'm learning that if there's something there, I'm just like, oh, it's not a big deal. But the longer I wait, the bigger the deal it gets.
Yeah, the bigger the deal, and then you probably find yourself, I'm assuming, a little bit creating some resentments, and the thing just grows. Whereas if we have that awkward, maybe initial conversation, you'll find that generally the relationship is so much better.
Yeah, no, and I'm learning that I've been married for 6 years to Becky now, bless her. But I'm learning that, right? I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to bring this up. And then when you do bring it up, I tend to build it up in my head even bigger. And I think we do that a lot with mental health. Oh, I have stress. I can do it. I'm not going to talk about it. But it just gets to the point that if we talk about it when it's a small thing, it's so much easier to work on and deal with and move past.
Yeah, you're right again. And what I find from speaking to individuals is we try to either downplay what we're going through that no one will understand. It's not as big as the next person's, or the opposite. It's so big, no one would ever know. And when we start talking about it, 9 out of 10 times, the people you're talking about can relate to that story in some fashion.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Cool. Thank you for jumping on, Brady. This has been one of my favorite podcasts. Both you and Colby and JT was on here as well. Guys that I know, right? And it's so cool to see how we've all come full circle. We're better humans. We're now serving people instead of working for a paycheck. Obviously, that pays the mortgage.
Yeah.
But doing what you're doing, right? You're creating a culture, and you said it's going slower than you'd like it to, but it's going. Right?
Absolutely.
It wasn't going 2 years ago before you went on your journey.
No, and I always saying something is better than saying nothing.
Yep.
In this regard, when we're talking about mental health, reach out if you need to, or you're feeling the urge. And if you're the opposite end and you're seeing someone, just ask how they're doing.
Yeah.
And be genuine about it. Pick the time and the place and make yourself available for that person, because there's a good chance that person will take you up on it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thanks again, man. I appreciate all the work you're doing within your department. You've made my life better over the last 20 years. So I'm lucky to have known you. And it's great to see how happy you are and your kids with Stacy and the good work you're doing. So keep it up, man. I appreciate it.
A lot of good memories, brother. We'll have to keep them going.